moment. Okay. So let's get started. Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. It's an honor for me to be here. It's also the spirit of Dino Lipati, whom I personally really like and listen. I have my CDs that I listen, and it's really kind of an overwhelming feeling to be here, because I believe that there is always a kind of a spirit that's living here. And perhaps I start with the introduction, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. The language is okay, yeah. Right? I mean, it's, because unfortunately I don't speak Romanian, so I can speak English, Russian or French, but I think English is okay. And let me say a few words about myself. My name is Sutyagina. I was born in Russia, in Tomsk, it's in Siberia, and I come from the musical family. My mom was a pianist whose teacher was sent to Siberia during the war, because you know that all the conservatory was moved from Moscow to different parts. So Olga Kotlarevskaya was a student of Neuhaus, but she spent the last years of her life in Tomsk, and my mom studied with her, and the wish of my mom was that her children also play. So of course, as you too, perhaps, we started very early to practice, and my sister is also a pianist, and she lives in Krasnoyarsk. And during my studies, there was the possibility to get scholarships. So I got a scholarship from the American, it was an American Collegiate Consortium. This program, as far as I know, doesn't exist anymore, but I'm sure there are different ones, like I think Fulbright still exists. But this program that was for, I think that was for the Eastern European countries to support the development of democracy. So that was the program that we got. It was Gorbachev together with the Bush who kind of financed it. So I had a chance to travel to Oklahoma. So they sent me to Oklahoma. This is the Siberia of the United States, and I said, well, and I spent 1 year there. And later, when I was back in Russia, in Tomsk, where I studied, I got a scholarship. This is the Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst, DAAD, and I think that's really active. So, and they provided me 1 year of studies in Frankfurt. So I was there, and afterwards, when I finished, when I graduated, it was kind of a difficult period, well, because I mean, this is something you will well know, or I mean, this is like, what do you do, you know? And you know, the colleagues of mine or the other students, they kind of stayed in Frankfurt, and I thought, well, what should I do? So basically, I also moved to Germany, but I couldn't find a job as a pianist. So I wasn't playing for, let's say, 6 or 7 years, stopped completely. Well, and I had a job as a, well, I was doing the cash collection, you know, kind of doing this office job, you know. But then, when the years were moving, you know, I kind of felt the need to restart. So basically, everything that I lost, you know, I had to teach myself. And up to this moment, I would go and have master classes and go to private teachers. And my teacher was Volker Benfeld, who was professor at the Hamburg Conservatory. Perhaps you know him. He combines Russian and American school, because he studied in Juilliard School, and he's kind of Scrabble and Liszt player, you know, very, let's say, like monumental player, you know. And so I took classes with him. Then I also took master classes with Eva Kupic, who is from Poland, who is now a professor in Hanover, for example. So she had also her vision of some things. Then I also worked with Radko Delorko, perhaps you know him. He writes very interesting practical books about piano. Radko is very down to earth, you know, so it's everything. For example, the book that will appear soon, it's called, for the moment it's in German, Prof tips for pianists. And it will be translated into English, and it's really one of the most insightful books that there are about the career as a pianist, you know. I also took classes with Wolfgang Schmidt-Leonardi, who also had his take on the on piano playing. And currently I'm working with Michael Leslie, who is Australian pianist, and he is he's from Australia, but he studied in Munich and with Rosen Schmidt, and he is personally a very fine interpreter of Beethoven and Bach. But this is not the point. What I particularly appreciate about him, his view of creativity. So basically my focus is creativity, and coming back to myself, when I restarted playing the piano, so now I am a freelancer, so I'm based in Munich, and I divide my work between playing as a soloist, getting different, like independent pianists, getting engagements here and there, doing also private events, private concerts. Sometimes small orchestras invite me. Of course, I try to apply to different festivals. That's like kind of one part, like this traditional academic pianist part. I also work with singers, and I also offer them the vocal coaching. So this is also kind of part. I do some teaching, work mostly with adults, not children, and also people like myself who restart playing after a break. So I kind of specialize on this kind of people, you know, who kind of perhaps now retired, but or they want to pick up on the skills that they left as children, for example. And one big part of my life is Moving Classics TV. This is an internet platform that well, we built with a couple of people who helped me in Munich, and this is the platform for new composers. So every week I select and play and record one composition that I also present online together with the composer of the week, presentation of the composer. So it's a channel for new piano music, but it's a because it's for social media, so it has a kind of a certain appeal to the broad audience. So this is also perhaps a pre-selection. So it's not the academic, channel. It's really to show the general audience the love of new music, just to see that there are really interesting things happening. You know, so it's not really the intellectual music. It's everything. So the philosophy is that I'm searching for some new ideas, and I share them. Sometimes they are better, sometimes they are not. So, but it's like to discuss with you, you know. So I'm not, the academic committee. You know, of course. I mean, I try to do some variations. So sometimes music is more academic. Sometimes it's nearly in the pop area. But it's kind of it's a very bright, broad aspect. So, like for the moment, I'm getting every day 2-3 new requests from all over the world, and I kind of try to have more time to record the music, but because it's not a commercial channel, so I have to kind of make a compromise, and always I want to expand, but you know, this is a different matter how to expand. So, but this is like moving classics very briefly. And the last part, and perhaps also the biggest part of my work, I work with people on creativity. So I work as a creativity coach, and I do some research together with psychologists from the Munich Technological University, and this is like how to develop the creativity. And this is something that also interests me very much, and so this is the tool that I developed is a creativity break, and it can be applied to different professions. It can be applied to managers, because I offer it also to companies like Siemens, for example, had it last Tuesday, up to, of course, top professionals like you are. So I guess for today, there are several possibilities what we can do. I think it's more interesting that we talk and you play, and we kind of have this interactive thing, and then you can decide what's your goal, or what's your agenda, because I think it's not interesting when I talk the whole time, you know. So you know what I can do. So you have this different the aspects that I told you about. So we can talk. We can schedule our conversations, because I really want it to be conversations. Yeah. So you tell me what you do, and if I can give you tips or share with you something from my life experience, because I mean I can talk about music business as an independent pianist in Germany, for example, especially, you know, because I come from Russia, so I can tell you, you know, how to you know, develop yourself, for example. I mean, if you want to pursue that, because you know, it's all very close. It's 2 hours, and you're in Germany, so one day you will also be traveling, and now there are no borders. So you know, one day you play here, next day you play in Dublin, and then again here, perhaps in, I don't know. So it's yeah, and especially, you know, what really interests me personally is like how to unleash this creative potential that people have, you know, because like, for example, I mean, Dino Lipatti had his own personal style, don't you think? I mean, because you can really recognize when he played, and all the, like the old ones, you know, like Richter, I mean, we all recognize it. And I personally like to hear that, you know, the pianist of tomorrow develop this something, you know, something that makes you know? So that it's not like, I don't know, Michael Leslie playing this, or you know, or somebody who is, you know, playing the competitions, etc., etc. But it's just like something special. So maybe I can help you with that. I don't know, just give an impulse, what I heard or what I knew. So yeah, so let's get started. You definitely brought some music with you, or you have already the issues, or I mean, let's start.
I would like very much to hear a little bit about every aspect of
yeah,
the
I think
because
that's good.
everything you said seems very.
Yes.
And then
maybe yeah. The question is how to get started, or how to. Okay, yeah. So maybe when.
Could we start with the creativity,
Yes.
and then maybe talk a little bit about contemporary piano?
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. So first, the creativity. Well, you know, speaking about the creativity, you know, the tool that I developed is so-called the creativity break. And on the channel that I have, we have about 250 composers, and I conduct interviews with them. So the interviews are all there. It's www.movingclassics.tv. Under each composer, you will find his profile or her profile and an interview. And in the interview, there are standard questions because I find it interesting so that you kind of ask the same questions and you can compare. Because this is how I get ideas about people, and I always ask them, what is the role of creativity for you? What is your creative process? How can you kind of unleash it? And so taking all this data, it's about 250 composers, I kind of reduced it, I mean it's really a reduction, to seven big points that I present in this creativity break. So I'll just go with you quickly through these 7 sources of, I mean you can call it sources of inspiration, sources of creativity. So the first is, I mean, you wouldn't believe it, but, and I mean, this is also Oliver Sacks, you know, the Oliver Sacks, it's a neuro person. He also, I'll give you his quote first, and then I develop from this. So Oliver Sacks basically says that to develop the creativity in young people, it is advisable to start with imitation. And I mean, this is what you definitely are doing and what we were doing. So you kind of learn from Dino Lipati, or from you, of course, personally, and you kind of imitate. And I mean, now you have YouTube, of course. I mean, you listen to different, and you try imitate. And then he says, okay, imitate. And then you just need time and the maturity, so that the time works for you. So what you imitated, it kind of builds your personality. Oliver Sacks, not me. So, and then there is also the so-called, but this is a conscious process, yeah, so you continue working, but then he says, and this is something really interesting, yeah, then he says, but it's not enough, apparently, and he says that you need also unconscious process that's going on during this time. And this is really the point, because up until now, I mean, like, believe me, nobody has found out the formula, how this unconscious process is working. So this is, for example, what makes Horowitz, Horowitz, you know. So I think that the person who will find that out will get Nobel Prize, yeah, because. But this is where it starts really interesting. So this unconscious process. So the first source of creativity is intuition, and by intuition, I mean it's a connection to yourself. You know, like being authentic with you. You know, how to get this? Like Michael Leslie, for example, tells me that when I, or when, for example, you approach the piece, the first and the most important thing is to make it your own. Yeah, but it's not you destroy, you know, the piece by your personality. It's like you kind of bring them together. It's like the marriage of two, the harmony. Yeah. So this is like really the goal that you want to have. This is the like being with the surroundings, being with yourself, and this is like the intuition. But then, of course, you will ask me how to get there. Yeah. Taking at all the answers that I got, because of course, I mean, I would ask, well, it's nice, of course, I understand, but how to get it? Apparently, the key would be through the movement. Movement, yeah. Because, I mean, look at this. Beethoven, when he was composing, he would always go on long walks. I mean, we all know this. But, you know, the thing that it really works for me personally is really movement. So you try to listen to the piece. I mean, of course, I mean, first, again, it's a question how you listen to the piece. I mean, you can, at the beginning, you definitely listen to Horowitz, and you try to really move to this. So basically, you get this piece in your body, you know? So you kind of see and try to do the, I mean, you can conduct or do some dance, but you kind of try to internalize all the changes, you know? And I mean, I tried it several times, especially with the pieces that I have difficulties with. And I mean, for some reason, for example, something like Beethoven or Schumann is difficult for me. I don't know, I don't get the feeling, you know? So I really try to, when I kind of move to this, then I get the, you know, it kind of gives you the connection, you know? And so just moving and trying to internalize the, and then when you start playing, it's kind of, you're one step closer. So this is intuition and movement together. So this is the first. I mean, you can try it out. I mean, this is perhaps something. The second one, it's called actually empathy. And by empathy, we mean it even much broader. So it's not like listening to others, interpreting and reacting to their feelings, but it's just like getting impulse from the surroundings. And this again, you can, like when we use it for music, I mean, that can be several things. You get, it's just like you search for the feedback, yeah? And the feedback can be, of course, your professor, then it can be your colleague, then it can be the room, because you get the feedback from the room, you know, or it can be also the street, you know, so you're kind of searching for impulses in the environment. And especially when you have creative how would you say, blockage, right? Blockage. So then how to move from there, you know? So you just kind of try to get something that keeps your interest, so kind of for a new impulse. And I find it personally especially important when you're already out of the conservatory, because that's what I personally always say. I mean, when you're within the structure, I mean, this is easy, you know, I mean, you get your feedback, you have people who care of you, you know, who support you. But once you're alone and you don't have anybody, that gets really tricky, you know, and that's where I find the empathy is so important. I mean, and the older I get, the more importance it becomes, because, like, seriously, I mean, who will give you feedback? I mean, people won't really, you know. I mean, of course, critics will write something, but this is totally different matter, because they have their own interests, you know. So you ask for the feedback, but you know, to give feedback is like to give somebody 100 euro, you know. It's really the gift, because it's the time and the appreciation that the other person gives you, you know? And to really give a sincere feedback, you know, that's because, I mean, to say, oh yeah, it was beautiful, oh, I like your octaves, oh, wow, yeah. But, you know, okay, you don't get further with the octaves, you know, like, believe me. I mean, of course, yeah, I mean, if you, yes, I mean, if you're already engaged in have a job in the Philharmony, yes, of course, I mean, practice octaves, you know? I have nothing against, but you know how to get there, you know, it's not the octaves that help you. So that's why I say it's really kind of, I wish I were more transparent as a teenager, or, you know, or as a young pianist, just kind of listening. And this is also like in business, for example, people are doing this design thinking methodology, yeah? So which means that you always kind of ask your customers what they want. So it's a philosophy, it's a mindset. You ask the customers, what do you want this product to be? Then you kind of do the small changes, you bring it back. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, yeah? You bring it back, then they test it, then you get it back, and then you do it better next time. So it's like this never-ending process. I mean, this is totally different to my my personal education that I had, because for us it was like, well, either you play Beethoven, at least, I don't know, well, not Richter, but you know, somebody on this level, or you don't play it at all, because, you know, it must be really perfect. But, you know, in our world, you know, everything's changing so much, and you have to be very flexible. So that's why I find personally this second point with the source of empathy is much more interesting, because it gives you much more opportunities. So this is the empathy, but this is really, it's not something that comes to you, it's an effort, you know? So it's like you try to listen to your own performance, but you also listen to everything around. So, I mean, perhaps it's difficult to explain, but I hope that you understand it. It's a very, it's a kind of an abstract way of saying. And then you kind of, yeah, just being open, you know, just seeing what's happening, you know? Because every day there are chances, there are possibilities, and sometimes we don't see them, you know. So this is the mindset. So this is the third one. Then the third one is particularly important for people who kind of went through some difficult times. And by difficult times, I mean, like, look, there is a competition, there is one winner, and he gets it all, right? I mean, okay, 4 or 5 others perhaps get some money and might get contacts, but I mean, they're kind of okay, but not really that okay as the first one, right? I mean, the first prize, the laureate or diploma, you know, yeah, but which is also very, very difficult to get. So, and what about the others? Imagine what were the figures for the Tchaikovsky competition, how many applications they received? Oh, many, yeah. I think 200 were for the close selection, but there were even more before. So because you can, like today, you send your YouTube link, or and that's it, you know. So everybody sends YouTube links, so it got even bigger. So, but what about the other people? Imagine you apply, and you don't get the feedback, right? So, and you trained the empathy, so you get always kind of a negative reinforcement. So what do you do from there? And that's why this third point is important. And this is greatness. Yeah? But why greatness? Meaning believe in you. It's really self-confidence. So it's like being great, feeling great, and having great ideas. Because if you don't really believe in yourself, I mean, this is, I think, universal law. It doesn't get you anywhere. So for me, it's much more fascinating, for example, to see how people get creative with their careers. I mean, and please understand me correctly. I mean, I don't want to diminish the achievement of Kantarov, for example. I mean, that's really, I mean, I was for him, so, but I mean, this is like really top of the world, you know. I mean, wow. But it's more interesting to see what other people who were not accepted by the piano competitions, what do they do with their life? Because they are much more interesting in the way that they do kind of unusual things. And their personality also develops in a different way, and this makes them, like in the long run, even more interesting, you know? I mean, like speaking, not judgmental, but I mean, you can look at the, for example, Masleyev, yeah? I mean, he is a good player, but you know, he has to move in this schema. He doesn't have the time to develop his creativity. I mean, this is really, it's part of the game, you know, because he has to fulfill certain things, and I mean, he has to perform like in the way. But it's a totally different set. But then for people who are not Masleyev, or who do not get this this reinforcement from the rest of the world, you need to do this visualization, you know, exercise. It's really like take, I don't know, 3 minutes of your time and just kind of say to yourself, I mean, even why not? I mean, you just listen to Horowitz and close your eyes and you kind of feel this Wiener Musikverein, you know, just kind of being there, you know, mentally. And it's also interesting. You perhaps you watched this film about Freddie Mercury. Yeah. Do you remember the first and the last scenes when Freddie is going up the stairs to the concert of his life? And remember how he was standing there, and he was really, before going on stage, he was doing like this. But this is proven. This is Jordan Peterson. Do you know Jordan Peterson? Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah, me too. I listen to everything what he says. He says this is this lobster syndrome, you know. So the lobster, you know, the lobster, when every morning when he wakes up, you know, he stands up and does like this. Yeah, but this is like his instinct, I think, right? And this way, and then he goes searching for food, you know. But I mean, this is for people. It's the same. And I played in June a big concert for me in Herkulessaal, and it was piano concerto Ravel. And I had a serious illness before, and it was really kind of, I don't know, it was I didn't have energy. It was difficult for me, and I played it for the first time in my life. So. And I was standing outside, you know, this feeling, you know, like they were playing already the first piece, and I was standing there, oh God, yeah. And I felt kind of, I didn't know. And I thought, okay, well, I know this creativity break, I might as well use it myself, okay? And I said, well, let's see if it works for me. So I did the first, second, and the third source, the greatness. Oh, there is something. And I was doing this lobster, and you wouldn't believe it. I mean, like, seriously, it helped me. It helped me. Yeah. And I did it a couple of times. And then, you know, by the time I walked on stage, I felt really like Freddie Mercury. Yeah. It was a good feeling, but it wasn't that I felt like arrogant or so. No, because I'm somebody who is doubting. And I mean, of course, like, objectively looking, of course I have to doubt. Because, yeah, I mean, like, seriously. Yeah, but then it's not helpful. I mean, this is my room, this is my orchestra I have to play, so it's not the time for self-conversations, but it helped. So I really think, I mean, it's in all the books, you know, yes, I mean, you have to feel confident, but I mean, I really think that the winners, I mean, they have this something winning about them, you know, even before they go on stage. I mean, when you watch the competitions, you know, how people present themselves. And I think, I mean, perhaps I exaggerate, but I really think that the way, you know, like, for example, when Hélène Grimaud goes on stage, I mean, she kind of, I have a feeling that, you know, she kind of knows she's really taking time. She's not like, because I mean, like, when I go on stage, and I mean, when I was younger, I would always kind of go like this, yeah, because I don't know, okay, well, let's start playing, goof, okay. But it's I think it's really like knowing who you are, you know. So I mean, when she goes, it's like, I mean, this is the star, but. It's difficult to find the very kind of gradation, because I mean, if you come like this and start playing and it's like nothing, I mean, I find it embarrassing, for example. I mean, I personally, right? Because it's rather you kind of start low and work your way through, but I personally, I cannot deal when it's other way around, because I find it's embarrassing, you know. So it's rather, you know, I play as I can. Or not say, oh, I'm so good, and then people say, well, actually, she cannot even play the scales, you know. But I mean, yeah, that's it, you know. So this is the greatness. But I think you understood this idea. So it's kind of use it for your advantage. And then the fourth is the most interesting. But I think this is really what it's like for me to be a musician. Because musician, it's very abstract. You know, I always wanted to do theater, for example. because theater, the words have meaning. You can have gestures. You have much more tools. Yeah, I mean, this is more tangible, right? You have a little table and everything. Yeah. As a pianist, I mean, look, you are at a disadvantage because all the time you never have a facial contact. So you always sit like this. And I mean, of course, I mean, your teachers would say, yes, you have to persuade through your playing. But this is so difficult. I mean, like, it's not because you are, it's difficult for you, it's difficult for us, for audience. Because when you kind of look and have a facial, you know, contact, there's always more possibility that you reach the people. And I mean, playing the music is all about reaching the hearts, right? So, how to reach for the hearts, you know, from this, because imagine, this is your position. So you tell the stories, but being like this. So how to do this, huh? I read about this, and I also, I mean, this is what the people are telling, so I'm just giving you these ideas further. It has something to do with this, what's this English? In German it's a Spiegelneuron, you know, this neurons that we have. So it's like when you have something in your mind and you really have this energy of interesting things happening, for some reason it kind of gets over to other people in the room. And the other way around, yeah? Which means that because you are the leader in the room, you have to have a kind of transmit this, but very strongly, something that you're doing. So it's about fantasy, but fantasy in the way of storytelling. Which, what I mean, that when you start playing something, it can never be abstract. I mean, even if you play something like totally abstract, as Hindemith, I don't know, something, but it's very tangible. So you play something, and you're kind of telling stories. Like for me, it's really individual. This is how you get your fantasy going, and it can be anything. It can be colors or something. I don't know, something's happening on the street, or and then this is. You kind of stay to this story through the whole time, yeah. And I really believe that this storytelling, it's kind of a conscious effort, gets over to the audience.
Somehow.
Yeah, somehow, yes, it does. Because I mean, that's the only thing you can do actually, yeah. Because without the story, I mean, well, but I mean, this is the fourth, so it's so which means that, for example, when I'm playing something, yeah, and I kind of have the feeling, for example, I have low energy, or I don't have inspiration, or I have a feeling that suddenly people are getting very, very nervous, or just bored, you hear somebody, you know, then I intensify it. So it's like telling a story for big children, you know. So there is something happening, you know. So I kind of remind myself, oh, what was it that I wanted to say? But I mean, of course, it's kind of the next level. And speaking about this next level, I agree that it's like Kapachinska, you know, who said that. She needs to have her scores in front of her, and this is, I mean, like for me personally, this is the case, but I mean, it's not the case for you, because you have a better training perhaps, but when I work too creatively with the fantasy, then my memory, I get problems with the memory, so that's why it's kind of, yeah, it's a paradox, or it's a little bit a contradiction with what I'm saying, because I can prepare a version, and I play this version, so. But when I try to get really creative and storytelling, and especially the more I get into this, I can, especially by long works, I can completely get lost. Huh? So I use either the music, or you know, you can use the iPad. But I notice, for me personally, I play better in a way that I play free, and this is also interesting because. I mean, of course, when you play without the score, I mean, you are kind of free, you have more freedom. I mean, definitely, but not when you perform. And I mean, like for me, when I perform and when I try to do something, you know, and try, for example, to use the empathy, which means impulses from the room, you know. So then I feel freer when I have music as just to back me up. But then, of course, I have to train myself to play by heart, but then still knowing the reference where to look if something happens. So, but it's just like a step, but it's about the fantasy, so it can be dangerous. Then the next is, of course, improvisation, and this is, I think it's. I wish I had it more in my training, because we didn't, and I don't know if it's like, for example, for the pianist training, it was a kind of an optional course that we had, and I even remember I took it well, one semester, and it was the most difficult that I ever had. So it was because it was totally different, you know, just to sit there and improvise, you know. To the topic, it's yeah, because usually I would start, develop, but then even if I don't like, I kind of continue where I stopped. So it will be more or less the same, but even if it's like weak, but I repeat it, and it's so. I think by improvisation, it's perhaps not really the art of improvisation, like the real pianist, you know, or for example jazz or do, but I think it's really like this freedom or the mindset. Well, just anything is possible. And now I try to do it every day a little bit, you know, for my level as I can. And I notice, for example, what it helped me a lot when I have my memory problems. You know, I can improvise, you know, and this is really kind of, and it doesn't really shock me. So I find that this, I think that any pianist should be able to do, I mean, like in an ideal case, improvise the cadenza to piano concerto number 4, for example, of Beethoven. I mean, why not? Because it's really the quality of the music, you know, the freshness of it. And I think this is also something that we should always have in mind when we play. Because for me personally, the most interesting performance is it should look very fresh, spontaneous, you know, but not like I hear, oh, there are 10,000 hours there, you know. I mean, it's, of course, it's there is a respect, but there's no emotional attachment. And I think it's a question of how you sell your product today. And I mean, now I kind of make already the jump to the question, you know, how to sell your piano performance, you know, because it's not we are not speaking about the academic, you know, courses. I mean, this is free market. And in the free market, I mean, the market is really free. So you have people who, I don't know, who took, well, I mean, who are self-made, you know, they perhaps learned in 2 years, but they write their own songs, you know, and they play piano and they feel the chords, you know. I mean, for example, somebody like, you know, what's his name? Niels Fram. I mean, of course, Niels Fram, he studied piano, apparently, and, well, at least this would write in his biography. But, you know, when, I mean, he can feel this big hall, Gasteig, you know, in Munich. It's a huge hall, but he plays technically. I mean, it's easy. I mean, we all can play it just prima vista, you know, the music. But it's so, which means that it's not the technical mastery. It's the connection that you sell, right? Not your technical mastery, right? So that's why I find something like fantasy and improvisation very important. And then the last 2 sources I quickly mentioned too. This is like networking, because this is the basis for your work I mean, for career, because this is network is everything, and it's not really. I mean, we all know that, but to develop it, you need different skills. And I mean, this is like social skills. It's like communication skills. And I always find that we pianists, we are at a big disadvantage. Why? Because, for example, the singers, they always need pianists to support them. I mean, just for their formation and also for the performance. I mean, their whole mindset is always like searching a partner, and I mean, and they know that it's like friendship, you know, it's not like, you know, it's like give and take. So they are brought up in this mentality that they need to, and they sing in choir or in this ensemble, so they're social, right? I mean, pianist is the musician who can be, perhaps it's the best to be on your own, and sometimes it is. I mean, yes, of course, because you don't need to share, you know, your money, you know, with others. I mean, and sometimes it's easy, you know. You don't have to arrange the rehearsals with people because there's never time that suits, you know, etc., etc. But it has a disadvantage that we don't learn how to build networks. And I think the pianists are one of the most who practice the longest, of course, and you have the longest pieces to play, etc., etc. So the pianists are at a disadvantage. I mean, the collaborative pianist, that's why it's called collaborative. I mean, they learn to be different, but how to bring both together, to be a solo concert pianist and to be a really good collaborator. Well, I mean, this is where it starts, because I would say, like on average, one contact, it's about 2 years till it brings you some effort, some results, the effort that you put. So imagine, I mean, how long you live and how many contacts you can really, you know, develop. And then it's also the question of how you multiply. I mean, for me, anything that we are doing, it should have some dynamic, you know. Because if there's no dynamic, then, you know, what's the point of doing it, you know? Or, like, commercially speaking, you're not able to survive, yeah? Because, which means that one concert should bring you at least one, but if it's only one, then you are not able to live as a free pianist. So it should be always 2, you know, so that you have a kind of enough you know, possibilities to develop, because you know that everybody plans well ahead. And I mean, for example, I know that some really small, tiny orchestras in Germany, you know, not in Munich, not even in Munich itself, somewhere really in the, I say in the pampa of Munich, they plan in 5 years. Imagine, I got a contract with them, but it's in 5 years. I said, well, really, in 5 years, but, you know, how come? They said, well, I'm sorry, we are busy because we have already contract with the solist. We do it only twice a year. So, I mean, because I applied to them, I didn't know them. I wrote, you know, how about this? Because I always try to push, you know, the new compositions of composers. So I said, well, why don't you try? And people say, well, we are booked. And then they said, yes, well, good idea. But how about, and then they put something like 2, 0, I don't know, 25, and I'm like, 25, it's like, I'll be perhaps retired by then. But then they said, no, but, well, either you, and then they said, yeah, and let's choose the date, and I'm like, well, let's choose the date. I'm like, seriously, let's see, what's the best date for you? And I'm like, oh, you should ask me. Yeah. But I'm like, seriously? And I was like, well, it's a difficult piece. I should, this time I do everything really differently. Yeah? I start practicing early. Yeah, and I practice 1 week and I'm like, am I crazy? And I thought, well, so I still don't know, perhaps I should really continue practicing, but this is life, you know. This is in Europe, and I can imagine that with the Wiener Philharmonic, I don't know, it's like 20 years. I have no idea. But well, so this is about networking. But I mean, it will work. I guess it will really work if you kind of. But you see, this is also a challenge. I mean, this is a question of time management. Because my biggest problem as a pianist, or a freelance pianist, is a time management. How to structure it. Because this networking should also be part of your daily activity, exactly as practicing. But how to incorporate it, you know? So, you know, and it takes energy. And I noticed, for example, that I need energy for example, practicing. So, like trying to balance it. But I mean, I guess it's really kind of individual question. But this is really something to think about. You know, how you try to organize everything. It's a complex task. You know, and then you kind of have to make sure. You know what's important for you. So you have to go there. And many people, for example, forget that it's, and I mean, especially the most obvious example is using the social media. We can also talk about this because the social media is the, I would say it's the biggest possibility that you can have today as a musician, because this is really transparent. You know, it's all there, and people get an image. But we'll talk about it right now. The only thing I wanted to say is like people in social media think that they send, you know, they send, you know, they post, beautiful picture, even more beautiful performance, oh wonderful, yeah. But they forget that all we do, we just send. So you send, me send, and it's all 1 million of posts that nobody's looking at, because I'm, you know, sending mine, you're sending yours, but I'm not looking at yours because I'm busy, you know, sending mine. And this is the problem. You see, like seriously, I mean, this is the biggest problem, and this is the reason, for example, why the whole algorithm on Facebook was changed, because we changed it ourselves. I even noticed, for example, the composers, you know, who are sending the things. It's like, okay, I send you the music, yes, you share it, yeah? Okay, of course I do, because I mean, this is what Moving Classics is there for. I mean, this is really my goal, so I do. But, you know, they don't share, you know, my things, you know? And I always wonder, and this is something that we all forget to do. So you have to go and comment the others. So that's what the artists are expecting you to do. So, for example, a big concert organizer or the agents, I mean, that's how they are working. I had a very interesting conversation with a small agent in Munich, and I can tell you also my experience, because I think it's really the very representative, you know, usually I write to the agents, and I never get an answer, well, which is 99% of the time. So, but then this one, I kind of knew that he had a student who was official student from the Munich Conservatory who got 1.8, and I mean, this is really, I mean, she's really good. I mean, I don't see myself in the competition with her. I mean, she's also 10 years younger, and so she is in this in his group of musicians. But I thought, well, you know, how should I write to him? Well, usually I write, well, yes, I play the contemporary works of Moving Classics, so maybe you can help me to find new opportunities. But then I thought, well, perhaps because it's what I usually write, but I knew that he knows my professor, Volker Benfield. So I said, well, the Volker Benfield told me about you, and then my usual text. So 2 months later, I get an answer from him. Oh, you mentioned something, Volker Benfield. Perhaps we should meet for a coffee. Do you have time? And I'm like, oh, yes, of course, yes. When? So, and that was really networking, you know, and of course my professor, I mean, he had a kind of a, I mean, just his name, he said, well, yes, I have an obligation to meet with you because you are a student of this professor. I mean, okay, well, which doesn't really mean anything in my case, but okay. So I met him, and then he said, well, I'm really so happy that you are not a pianist. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a kind of philosophical question, but I mean, still, you know, yes, of course, I do different things too, but I also play. And, well, at least even if you say I'm semi-professional, but or in comparison with somebody who is really kind of, you know, well, but he says, no, I mean, don't get worried. I mean, that's why you are here. You know? I don't talk to professional pianists. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, okay, how to behave, you know? And he said, no, you know, if the person is just only playing piano, I'm not interested. I mean, like, what should I do for him or her? And I'm like, well, I don't know, you're an agent. I mean, you might be searching for new opportunities. And he says, no, me searching. Yes, you're an agent, right? I mean, you search, provision, 15%, and then it's good for you, it's good for me, so we are happy. I said, no, I'm not a dog, I don't search. And I was like, wow, how do I behave? He says, either I know something for you straight away, yeah, or we don't talk. Because, he says, you know, for the moment, only big concerts, that makes sense to invest in them and develop them, because I don't organize small concerts. And I'm like, what do you mean by small concerts? How small is small? He says, well, something like for 400 seats, that's not interesting. I don't do this. Well, I might have hobby, but then if it's hobby, then I decide like I like. I mean, of course, like two people, I always have hobbies, and the pianists are, for the moment, are not good on the market. The prices are down because there are so many, and they are so good. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah. And I mean, that's what he said. Cello is good, and percussions. And then he said, and I mean, this is really the tip for you. I mean, piano and percussion, if you like that. I mean, I said to him, well, I think about it, but I mean, personally, it's not mine. Because it's, I mean, but some people like it. I mean, it's a percussive instrument after all, so, you know. So this is kind of this combination. So it's more like, I mean, I don't want to say circus, but that's where it goes. It's like this Martin Grubner starting a new trend, you know. So that's what he said, you know. And then he said, well, how the conversation finished, he said, well, okay, you call me when you want to talk again. So now I personally don't know, you know, how, should I call him or should I wait, or perhaps it's like the end of the conversation. This is how the agents work. So in other words, I don't want to discourage you. I mean, this is totally different intention that I have. But the thing is, you have to get creative. I mean, you have to contact this person. This person is looking for new opportunities. He is. And he said, I have time for hobbies, which means he can start new projects, but you need to come with a creative idea to him. It should be really something different. So, I mean, this is, for example, something that you can consider. And, yeah, and the last creativity source is that the importance of breaks, of relaxation, you know, because I think this is also something that we all forget when we really do things and when we practice. So it's kind of the most, well, it's not the most important, but it's like, it's also as equally important as others, so that you have enough time to let, you know, this unconscious process that Oliver Sacks was telling about to grow and mature. So just kind of having the breaks and kind of having this, yeah, just time. I mean, it's all about time, because I think to really get good, you need time. And this is like in our life, we cannot allow ourselves to get enough time, because we never have enough time, because it's expensive, you know, so you have to make money, and so, you know, or unless you have money, then you have time, so then don't listen to my suggestions. It's waste of your time in this case, you know. But this is really something. So once again, intuition, movement, empathy, greatness, fantasy I said, right? Improvisation, networking, and relaxation. So I mean the 7, and this is it's all there in the interviews with the composers or also musicians, so you can read and go into the details there. And I mean some interviews are more interesting, some are less, but it's or how it resonates with you, you know. So this is about kind of general thing about creativity. So now I was talking the whole time, and I didn't want to talk, you know. I didn't really want to talk. So.
Ce v-ar interesa să vă întrebați toate astea ce ați spus? Ce v-a stârnit curiozitatea sau credeți că ar fi util în astfel?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Cred că ar fi destul de explicită pe fiecare subiect.
Vreți să știți mai multe despre, nu știu, ceva, asta pentru ce o să faceți după ce terminați școala. Și plecați în lume.
Cum supraviețuiești primii 5 ani după ce termini universitatea?
How to survive in the first 5 years after you finish.
You graduate. The toolkit.
Yeah, but I mean, this is really, this is €1 million question. And I mean, this is really, I noticed myself, and I observed so many people, the hardest is perhaps the second year after the graduation, because, you know, when you're finished, you have, of course, you have still repertoire, and 1 year you can live from this repertoire because it's all in your fingers, right? And I mean, you still have this this modus, you know, this rhythm, you know, this life rhythm. So you know how you practice, and you practice. So and you are still motivated, and you apply everywhere, and you search, but I mean, it's still the beginning. So it kind of disappears, you know, as the years. It really disappears. Yeah. I mean, as the years go by, you know, and then you get so. Even, I mean, I would say the very thought. Just imagine this. I mean, you apply. I don't know, to the university, or I don't know what you want to. It doesn't matter where you apply. Even. Put it this way, music school in the Pampa of Bavaria, you know, like to travel with the train 1.5 hours, you know, you apply and you think, well, I mean, they should really come with a taxi and get me to teach there, you know, because it's like, who wants to go there, you know? And then you come there and there are 100 really top people standing outside. So, this is the situation, yeah? That's why I would say, I mean, like for me, I can talk only about myself, you know, how I decided to do things that nobody is doing. Because, I mean, this is the only thing, to be in the competition, at a certain point makes no sense, because, I mean, I know I was talking about believing in yourself and greatness, so it's kind of a, perhaps might be a contradiction, because, I mean, at the end of the day, of course I believe in myself, but I try to choose the niche, you know, and I would suggest to everybody to choose your own niche, like what you are the best at, right? And it can be anything. I mean, it can be, I mean, if you're really the best at playing with orchestra, then in this case, yes. I mean, like some people are really very good. And they should do it. I mean, if you can really I don't know, memorize in 1 week Poulenc piano concerto, of course. I mean, this is something you do. But this is not, you kind of search for your strength, and this is what I find with the intuition so important. You kind of go and do this, I would say, the time to reflect how you feel doing certain things. That's why I would say, or that's what I did, I try different things. Like, even if I say I don't want to teach children, you know, but okay, I go there and I try it, you know, or I go and talk, give a talk for in the psychiatric clinic for the patients there, and see, or for the old elderly or something, you know, like really different things. I mean, it can be also very. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, these examples. I also played in the embassies, or I played in the luxury hotels, you know, I even played on the bar, you know. So, because you never know where you meet really interesting people. And I mean, you wouldn't believe it. I played once for very, very little money somewhere also in the Bavarian forest, you know. And I thought, you know, why am I going there? You know, it's like, but then, you know, I met somebody who is an accompanist of Waltraud Meyer, you know, who's a really German singer, and he said, oh, you know, well, let's talk, and we kind of understood each other. I mean, now I'm thinking he's actually Romanian, by the way, but he's from I think Pennsylvania, right? And this kind of. And then he said, yeah, I mean, why don't you kind of go and accompany this and that? And then I could also got a really professional engagement. And imagine this is how this way, how it goes. So it's not like, you know, I apply there, right, and get a job. It's, I mean, in my case, it was never the case. It's like I apply here, and then I'm recommended here, and then I get perhaps engagement here, and then suddenly, oh, I'm here. So that's where I wanted to be, but it took me perhaps 2 years or even 5 years, but it's like how it comes here. So that's why I will try to continue educating myself afterwards, and by educating myself, like, of course, I mean, like, learning also repertoire that that everybody kind of, you know, you have this kind of this highlight or this Yamaha 50, you know, you know what I mean, this 5 most heard classical pieces for piano, you know, you have to have them all, you know, because this is something that you would need to have at the tip of your fingers, you know, because it's something like when I, for example, apply for the small occasions, it's never the repertoire that I suggest. I mean, it was never the case. Like, seriously, yeah, because I'm too small to suggest. You know, the Matsuev, of course, he suggested he plays. Well, they ask him, what do you want to do? You know, but in my case, never the case. You know, I suggest, and they say, oh, it's really interesting. Oh, wow, yeah. Oh, can you play Fantasie Pro 2? And I'm like, well, yeah, actually yes, but I thought, you know, no. He's like, okay, yeah. Oh, why don't you play Chopin? You know, all Chopin, yeah. And I get my money and I play Chopin. And then, if I was good, they would say, well, how about this, you know, you also do this moving classics, perhaps you can do the concert next year, yeah? And then I play what I want. So, but it's never the case that you play, I mean, they can, so that's why. And you see, the other thing I forgot to tell about this agent, and this is actually the most important thing. All musicians should have a following before you apply to the agent, which means that if you organize a small concert here, it should be full. If it's not full, nobody will organize concert for you, because it's really how will they sell the concert. Because imagine, it's the same, for example, for me, because I used to have the Munich Classic Salon in Munich, really small one, you know, it's 100 places. But even for me, you know, to get it, because I don't have any public money, so it's all my own investment. And it was always a problem, you know. Like, if I invite people from outside, you know, they don't have the audience in Munich, you know, in this particular area. But how do I sell them? I mean, of course, if I say, well, Dino Lipati comes, then it will be full. But you see, but then it's a kind of trade-off. The really expensive pianists are so expensive. Then again, I cannot sell very expensive tickets. So, but if it's somebody who is, for example, local star here, but is not famous there, it's difficult, because how do I say, even if I say, wow, he's really famous for Beethoven, but they will say, well, yeah, but what's his name? Yeah, do I know him? No, well, you see, this is where, for example, also the social media can help you. But I mean, this is also a different topic, because it's so, well, it's difficult because it requires that you should have a minimum capital money, you know, that you invest in it. Because, I mean, you cannot do it when you don't have a budget. You know, you won't get further. Even if you do something illegal, you know, and you copy, yes, I mean, if you download Horowitz playing, and, you know, there was the case like this, remember, there was this American pianist, I forgot this lady, that's what they were doing. She had the broadest repertoire ever recorded. The pianist who played everything. And everybody thought, oh, wow, I mean, this is like really incredible, and she plays everything. But what they did, they took the recordings of kind of, you know, this, not the top class, but like this good class, really good recordings. I don't know, from all the countries, you know, in the world that nobody knows, downloaded, copied it as a soundtrack, and it was all under her name, which was of course illegal, I mean, imagine. But that's possible. So what I wanted to say, you know, the quality is also the idea of quality. You know, what is quality? What is good pianist? You know, this is also the question, because what you think is good, the world might think differently. And I mean, it's because it's internet, and I mean the human beings. I mean, you know it yourself. I mean, we humans, we are visual. We are not the, you know, hearing. Yeah. So for us, visual is. I mean, I cannot tell you the percentage, but I think it's over 60, which means first comes visual, because you see it immediately, and you hear secondly. And this is something that we all forget as musicians, because, I mean, of course, we are, from our types, are all, I would say, more auditory, right? I mean, that's why we are musicians, right? So, I mean, I'm, for example, very bad at visual things, yeah? That's why I cannot really memorize, you know, because some people memorize and they see, I don't, yeah. But nevertheless, still, you know, you see somebody, and this is like, oof, you see, this is already imprint in the head. So the same with the social media, it's all about visual representation, how people perceive you. So this is also something to think about, you know. And I would say it's a gradual process, and it's something where you really need 5 years after the graduation to build it up, because you kind of, for example, like with myself, I mean, I can tell you something really spooky. I mean, it's still in the internet, you can even see it. I haven't deleted it, but you know, when I was searching for something, I was very frustrated, and I told you I haven't played, I haven't even touched piano for 6.5 years. Well, completely, because I don't know, I had a kind of really broken, hard relationship to it, so, well, I thought, oh no. And then when I was restarting, you know, I was kind of looking for opportunities. I was getting a little bit more courageous. And then I thought, well, what should I do? And I wanted to do something with internet, because my job was also with the internet in this time when I was in my 20s. So, and I really like it. I mean, personally, I find it interesting. So it's so that was the case, what to do. So I thought, well, you know, like everybody plays Moonlight Sonata, of course, yes. But how about making a clip and telling the story, you know, but showing the story, like doing really crazy things, you know. So I kind of arranged, I did the videos. So I did the video with Clara Schumann Romance, then the Moonlight Sonata. For example, the one that's actually, I find it's okay, because the one with the Moonlight Sonata was completely crazy, because I thought I kind of make a persiflage, you know, kind of satire, because everybody's playing it, yeah? I change it. It's like for people who know nothing about this music, but know it's moon. So, I mean, I know it's nothing to do with the moon, don't worry. It was like me landing on the moon. So I was wearing the cosmic astronaut costume, you know. And the funniest part was I even wanted to have this, you know, this Russian dog. I think it's Laika or Belka or whatever. And we even borrowed the dog for the video production. Yeah, and that was the hardest part of it, not even the plane, you know, because the dog could react only to the sausage, and I was playing, and I always play. For my videos, it's always live, because I mean, this is like my personal thing. I know that it should be 100 takes and everything, but you know, for my videos, it's always live. So because it's you get what you see. I mean, this is how I play, you know. So it's no overtake, no changes. So we had this Moonlight Sonata that I was playing live, and this dog sitting here and doing like this with the nose, and her drooping, you know. And I was also getting hungry, and there was this the lady who was managing the dog. so it's all there. Unfortunately, only one cut with the dog, because the rest wasn't to be used. But it's all there, and I thought that people in the social media will like it, you know. The other video was a little bit more serious, more serious. It was like Jane Austen. I was reading the book, and I mean, this is still okay. I mean, I personally find it's kind of, I mean, if it's not good, but at least it's not as bad as this Moonlight. And then there was, and I did one video for Lan Lan competition, you know, perhaps it was not long ago, I think 4 years, Dine and Wine with Lan Lan. I thought, oh wow, that's good. yes. In Wien, I mean, you get a free ticket, you know, and you can dine and wine with Lan Lan. Very inspiring, yes, I'm participating, and I thought there will be hundreds of people participating. No, they were not. Because I think everybody thought it's ridiculous, you know. But I was one of them. Perhaps there were only 100. And what I did, I knew that Lan Lan is like a child. I mean, I know him indirectly from somebody with whom he was living together. So I knew that he loved cats. And he was like a big child. So I thought, oh, I want to win. So I did the video where I was playing the Turkish march, you know, and I was, and I had the Bavarian dress, and I was masked as a cat. And I was dancing to the, I mean, of course I was playing, but I mean, you can see it. Perhaps it's, I mean, this is cruel. I mean, if you are laughing, but I got a really good job. Not, yeah. I mean, not. I was one of the 10, so it was already something. I mean, to put it in relation, there were not so many, so so I was one of the. And they said something on the radio where they said something that Anna Sutyagina knows something like wants to. Flirt with Mozart or something. I don't know. And I was like, oh God, that was not meant like this. But it was nice the way they presented it. But some people said on the internet, oh my God, I mean, this is like so bad that they cannot even comment. You know? But I got the job. You know, it's really well-paid job, and you wouldn't believe it. In the Robert. Schumann Institute in Düsseldorf. Imagine this. Yes, and I played for 150, I think, celebration. Is it 150 of Heine? There was the Dichterliebe, you know, the love poet, with a very, very good baritone. Because, I mean, like, because this. You know, the Landler looked at it and he didn't invite me to dine and wine, but this lady, you know, I mean, she was also watching it, and because they kind of send it to some people, and this baritone, for example, he watched it and he liked it and he invited me. So, you know, because he said, oh, this is somebody totally crazy, I mean, it's something that I need. And so but what I want to say, I mean, it's really kind of, so you can do really complete nonsense, but if you do it with the, and I said, well, this is like me, you know, if you don't like this, then of course you don't invite me. I mean, yes, I mean, I don't pretend to be serious. I mean, I cannot hold serious concerts, you know.
Who was the baritone?
Was Thomas Bauer. Oh. Yeah, we did the recording with him, and it was fun. It was one of the best, and it was really serious engagement, one of the really professional ones. Yeah, so I was so surprised. I was like, wow. Yeah, but things like this happen. So what I want to say, I want to encourage you to do really crazy things, because I think we as classical pianists or musicians always have kind of limitations, because, I mean, of course, we are very critical. And I mean, that's how we are trained. And I mean, we have to be critical because, of course, I mean, I don't want to make critical of the art, you know, because, I mean, if I say something sacred, it's also not, because I think the new age generation is different. Even like, I feel myself kind of making it a little bit more liberal, you know. It's and I don't. I mean, it's just like food for thought. I mean, something what Richter was doing, you know. I mean, of course, it's a kind of a communist idea, and I mean, I'm not really, you know, into this communist stuff. I mean, like, really not, you know. But you know, he was playing everywhere. He was playing in all factories. I mean, he played really in all villages and this is not a bad thing, actually. I mean, and this is something that I like. And for example, I think the future jobs will be for musicians. And this is something that, I mean, if I had money, you know, I would open the department in the university for community musicians. You know what's that? Because I have some friends doing it, and they're so good, you know. But this is something where you need more skills. You know why? Because, I mean, I have one lady, you know, she plays, well, let's say 5 instruments, but understand me correctly, I mean, from my point of view, I mean, she kind of, her time, 5 instruments, that's the level. But I mean, that's enough to kind of, I mean, she can still play, because I mean, I don't play anything other than piano, you know. So she kind of can have a very simple music with these instruments. And she goes and talks to people and organizes choir here and choir there. So when she has her concert, for example, for Christmas, every year she does a concert. 300 people are standing there and they love her, and she goes to different hospitals, she goes to different senior residences, to schools, and she talks about music, and she kind of engages everybody and says, okay, and she brings really professional musicians like you, for example, to play there. But she has this psychology, you know, she can really motivate people about music, because when she's telling something, even if she doesn't know it, you know, but it's like, wow, you know, and you really want to listen. She says, wow, Hammer Clavier Sonata, you know, the big one, you know, oh, so beautiful, wow, and you think, oh, even I thought, oh no, I always thought it's too long, you know, and it's kind of too complex, you know, but I really need, and I listened with, after her introduction, there was one professor playing it, and I thought, it's one of the most beautiful I've ever heard. Like seriously, I didn't know it before because it was too difficult, you know, too complex. But what I want to say, it's somebody who is kind of interface between community, you know, people who who live, for example, there, who never go to the concert, even if it's across the street, but she kind of goes there and she grabs them, but in a positive way, you know. So this is also something, and I'm sure the future is not playing big concerts. The future is playing kind of small concerts, like on-demand concerts. So it's like small formations, but for example, from my experience as an entrepreneur, inviting different solists. I mean, these concerts I could sell, I mean, they were the best. So I invite different, and I always change. So it's like poetry, then singing, playing cello, playing saxophone, perhaps solo. Okay, I also play solo. But it's always kind of changing. So, and something, for example, doing kind of motto concert. So it's not like, well, today's, I don't know, Friday we play whatever we prepared, you know. But it's like really doing something, okay, today is, I don't know, December, something, just be creative, whatever is your idea. And I think this is, that will be more and more the future, yeah. So, I mean, of course, this, these online concerts are also popular. But the problem with online concerts, I always find the commercialization. So for the moment, you know, everything that I'm doing online, I kind of pay for it, you know. So I don't get enough money back. So there should be some kind of a vehicle so that, you know, all these online concerts bring you also your living, you know. So for the moment, where you actually gain money is just doing live concerts. Yeah, I mean to sell CDs, you can sell CDs only when you play concerts. But even then, many people in Germany, for example, don't have CD recorder, so they don't even take it if you give it as a gift, because they say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have a CD recorder. So people are really streaming music, yeah, on YouTube, of course. And I mean, this is really very high in the proportion. And I would say, because I also have something in Spotify, but you see, it is something. The only thing, it should be 1 million more, and then all these cents, they are coming together. But it's a very difficult process, you know, kind of, because you also need to do the effort to share it, you know, and this is a problem. I mean, I find it a problem because it's like the time. It's like a big hole, you know. You spend 8 hours and perhaps you get €10 out of it, you know, for the effort that you did. So I don't know about that, and I really don't know if there will be. I mean, now it's like standard practice. You know, they do the concert and they do the live stream. You know, the Tiffany Poon. Yeah, I mean, she's the only one who actually managed well, I mean, she starts her career, and I was surprised to see that she was already doing it like for 7 years, you know. I mean, of course, so imagine she was doing it 7 years. I mean, she's even doing it longer than I with my moving classics, because I'm doing it for 3 years, yeah. So, which means that she, with things like this, you need to get the critical math. And this is the problem, that people don't get this critical level. And to get this critical level, it's absolutely, you know, it really needs also money, you know. It's not only the content, you know. And another example with the money is a totally different one. It's Lola Stanova, you know her, yes, well. Did she plan a concert in Bucharest? No, because she planned I mean, I've seen that the whole Eastern Europe and Germany, you know, there was a concert for €28 in Gasteig. And you know, Gasteig is huge, the biggest. And I thought, oh, Gasteig, because not even Sokolov plays in Gasteig. You know, seriously, yeah. I mean, no. I thought, wow, €28, should I go or not? And I was like really curious. But you know what happened? Of course, I mean, they couldn't sell Gasteig. So they canceled it a couple of days before. I mean, I'm sure she had still to pay for the room. And they invited another lady from Russia, whom I didn't know, but she's actually Korean, Victoria Lee, I think, right? But, I mean, okay, she's also in the same kind of, I mean, they say the most beautiful pianist of the world, and when I read that, I thought, wow, okay, interesting, yeah? But I didn't want to change the tickets because it was also the small hall, but I would be really interested if there were people there, you know, because when James Rhodes, for example, played, there were only 40 people in the Karl Ove side, so it's really, I mean, James Rhodes I like. I mean, I kind of like his stories or his presentations. So I was there, I mean, I enjoyed it. But you see, and Lola Astanova has a huge followership, but she cannot monetize it by selling tickets in the live concerts. You see, but I kind of understand. So all these people, what I wanted to say is, like, all these virtual fans that you have, I mean, they're virtual and they will always remain virtual. I even have some virtual friends in Romania, you know, and I wrote I can try to really phrase with my breathing, like really physically, and it also keeps me through. And then there's no time for anything else, you know. That's it. I mean, for my level, it's yeah. But it helps me because I think the most interesting is it's like you cannot share joy and the beauty of music if you are busy with your moods. Yeah. I mean, because I mean, seriously, how? Because I mean, definitely you see when the person has a problem with searching for notes or something, right? But you can kind of hide it, you know, when you kind of make it as if you're breathing or telling the story, you know what I mean? So you're still searching for notes, but you kind of, you know, make it part of the concept, you know? Or at least for you, you know, because this is the most important. When you're on stage, you're like the captain, and this is your big ship, you know? So if you don't have yourself under control, I mean, we all sing. So basically, when you sing, we sing together with you, and we paid for your concert. I mean, so we are even in a worse situation than you, because you get your money anyway, right? I mean, usually. I mean, like, at least for this concert, but not for the next one, apparently. Yeah? So how to get this, you know? So it's really something to think about. I mean, I'm sure it's like years of experience that you will think and decide for yourself how to manage it. But I think this is what works for me, you know? Yeah.
I remember because you mentioned Rahman.
Oh yes.
I remember they said that he had an inspirational blockage.
Oh, inspirational blockage.
Sometime before he wrote the second.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I know. Yes,
and the psychologist helped him. But we don't know how. Maybe don't know.
Yes, I know. Yes, of course. Because I really I read the book about it. You know, there is a new book. I don't know if it's actually translated into English. No, it's called White Lilac. And it's, I mean, it's kind of half, I don't know how scientific it is. I mean, that's I can search for you the name of the author. I don't have it in my mind. It's somebody who wrote it, I think, 2 years ago. And yes, and he was in a bad crisis. And there was the Dr. Dahl, who was using his first, I mean, he was kind of experimenting, because this doctor, he kind of introduced hypnosis. So he was trying to get to his subconscious and doing this hypnosis. But on the other hand, because Rachmaninoff was kind of under treatment, so he would also take long walks. And he fell in love with the doctor, with the daughter of the Dahl. It's this lady N. Dahl. You know, it says in the Rachmaninoff concerto, it says it's but who is it? Because everybody said it's the doctor, right? But it's not the doctor. It's this lady. And there are even
proof for it. And you can, if you search for it on internet, you will even find where it comes from, because this lady was writing to him all his life, and he, you know, Rachmaninoff, when he played his concerts, as encore, as bis, he will play this lilac, you know, there is his transcription, da, 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 you know, so he would always play this every time, like as a bis. Why? Because he would get flowers, he would get this lilac at the end of the concert sent by this lady, and all his life, so he was kind of, so that was his inspiration or kind of conditioning for this, there was the possibility to make a film about it, but they didn't get enough finances, because I was asked to also participate, to play a small role in this as an actress, because I think they wanted, I think Matsuev wanted, of course it was for soundtrack to play, but so it was kind of, I read this score and the script, or so, but I think they stopped this project. So it was 2 years ago. To make the film from this, so. But I mean, of course, we don't know how true this story is. But this hypnosis, I read and I did the hypnosis myself in Munich, just. Like a way of getting inspiration. I mean, like my personal experiences, it's really interesting, because like when you are hypnotized, you continue talking to somebody, but you don't know, I mean, you don't realize it yourself, what you're talking about, and then you get feedback from your from the psychologist or from the doctor who is doing it, and the doctor is really telling you the problem that you have, and like, I mean, it's always kind of, in my case it was like going back to the childhood, you know, so it was the same patterns that I had as a child. So that's what he, for example, he told me that there is a kind of a very strong parent element in my constellation, and then yes, it's kind of because the problem was that I stress myself too much. Like I expect too much that I can give. So that was like his conclusion. He said, well, I mean, you can be as good as you are at this moment, and of course you practice and try to get better next time. But at that moment, I mean, that's it. That's the level. And this is something that really took me years to understand. Because I noticed that I get this kind of behavior now, for example, when I play with really good people. You know, for example, there was one violin player who won all the first prizes, and I mean, he's like 18, and I think, well, he'll perhaps even make a career. So I was playing with him, and which was really very exciting. But for some reason, I kind of thought that I need to, you know, just kind of really plain, I don't know, and I think I was doing too much. We were not even together, you know, and because you see, and I noticed, oh, this mechanism going, you know. And next time, thank God, it was the second time, because there were 2 concerts. I said, well, yeah, I mean, we already did 1 concert, and I mean, perhaps there will be no 3rd concert, so I mean, I just enjoyed. And he said, well, now we're together, and I'm like, oh, okay, well. so this is hypnosis. I mean, it's an interesting experience, but I prefer the floating. Do you know this floating? So it's like you lie on this water, salt water, and you experience the feeling of kind of soaring. It's like it's a really interesting feeling, yeah, and it's really true. I was learning this Ravel concerto by heart. I learned, and I went and I did this this floating 1 hour. I mean, it was expensive, but I wanted to test it, you know. And the next day, I really felt like things got better in my head. At least it was structured. Because they say they use it for example, yes, for musicians, they suggested, and for the athletes who do the complex motoric coordinative tasks or dancers. So it's like, yeah, because the best is really you learn something like, I don't know, third piano concerto, Rachmaninoff, and then you can, because you need this time to consolidate. Something, for example, that was always my mistake, because I never gave me this time, so you know, I would lose it all. So just taking this floating, it was for me, it was really efficient, yeah. I mean, I even have the feeling that it's still there somewhere. yeah, so that was interesting. And they also suggested for the inspiration blockage. But it's so easy to lose inspiration, especially like, because I mean we are all very sensitive, very emotional, very fragile, and this is the problem. And the world is so, I mean, you know, it's a business world, you know, it's a very materialist world, you know.
It's a problem because this postmodern world society that we live in is more and more commercial every day, and it's a struggle to conserve the good habits, the quality of things.
That's true.
The school as it should be. I mean, don't be commercial, be real, be value.
Yes, I know. And I mean, in Germany,
and then there are people with value, and
you
they
cannot
don't
do
sell.
yes.
That's a pity.
But this is even perhaps a tragedy, right? Because I mean, for people who really have value,
the face of the auditors of the public must be trained.
yes,
You cannot go down
absolutely.
at a very low level just to be influenced.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely. Yes, I
You have to
totally.
reduce them up
Yeah.
to the level that it should be.
Well, that's why I personally think that these people, these community managers, they should do this work, you know? I mean, there should be so many more who go and who really, I mean, if the word educate is bad, but kind of, well, show it to the audience. And then, you know, these people, you know, they prepare the next, you know, and then I'm sure doing this community work will bring new opportunities, and then it will generate more demand. Because I notice, for example, when I do the creativity training in companies, people look and say, wow, I've never seen a musician. I've never, but I ask, have you been to concert? No, never, no. And then they listen, and they say, well, just play something else. And they say, oh, it's so beautiful, it's really interesting. How interesting. And then they say, well, when do you have next concert? I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank God there's something planned. You know? Because if I say like, well, it's in 2025, you know, you know, but they ask, so which means that we need kind of the certain group of people who do, for example, really this, I don't know, the concerts, and then you have this.
It's even difficult to attract them to concerts.
Yes.
At least here, it's a lack of interest and lack of curiosity. I don't know how to express.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same in Germany. I mean, in Germany, of course, I mean, like, when I compare it to Russia, it's like 10 times more concerts. Because imagine how many concert halls are there, and sometimes you have days where I have a problem because it's like Sokolov is playing in one room, Matsuyev is in Gasteig, and then Grimaud is in Prince Regent Theater. It's the same time, it's the same day, more or less. Ooh, yes, what to choose? And I think that they can be crazy. I mean, they cannot play on the same day in Munich, because if you calculate how many people buy tickets, so people do go to concerts, right? But if we organize concerts, and of course it's totally different, because it's you cannot even compare it, because people sometimes prefer to pay high money, but they see the big hall. But I mean, this is the same with me too. If I travel, for example, here, I mean, of course, where do I go? I go to opera or I go to Philharmonia, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, and I don't even look who is playing. That's what I did in Wiener Musikverein, for example. Yes, and I thought, oh God, yes, I might as well stay at home. But I mean, because it was somebody I don't know who. I mean, I wasn't really this. I mean, I don't know, it was okay, but for my personal taste, it was okay. You know? So, yeah, but how to attract people don't. But then, yeah, speaking about my experience in this Wiener terrain, it was really interesting. I kind of understood why I cannot attract people, because there was something like really dark music, you know, and it was not what my mood wanted on this evening, you know, because I really was, for the first time in my life, I was in Wien, and I really wanted something, I'm not Strauss, but something really like, you know, and I was sitting there, and I was really like, okay, yes, First World War, I mean, music, something, I don't even know the composer or something, and it was like really big orchestra, and I was sitting there, and it was like very long, you know, and we were all sitting together, and I thought, you know, if you are really not in the mood and you make this experience, you don't buy a ticket again, because it's like, how to explain? Yeah, it's not for everyone, you know, because even for me it was difficult, and I was tired because I don't know, I was hungry, you know, and so all these things, and you cannot leave because people go. They say people go to museums because they can decide if I stay 30 minutes or if I stay 4 hours, you know.
Yes.
But here somebody else decides. And it also has a little bit, you know, problem, right? I mean, I don't know, but like to have a short of concerts, but perhaps kind of, I don't know, or to optional, I don't know. So I think the format of the concerts should be, yeah, thank you, should be different. So I don't know. Yes. But I mean, there are so many interesting things, right?
Vrea cineva să cânteze? Ask them if they want to play. They don't.
Yeah, I know, because we talk too much. I also noticed, by the way, it's interesting, the last thing to say, because I do make much talking and playing. You know what I noticed? It's really interesting that when I talk and play and when I stand, my hands continue talking. You know, it's really interesting. It's like it's two different levels, and it should be trained. You know, because it's so difficult when you explain something and you go and now, for example, because I talk too much, I kind of blocked your inspiration to play. It's really interesting.
There are two languages.
Yes, two languages. Yes, and this too, because for example, for me, yes, I wouldn't be able to play right now because it's something for me to figure out, because I talk for my concerts, because I try really to do for general audience kind of explain, but it's like I really talk very short and then play, because otherwise it's, so it's also the skill that needs to be acquired. Yes.
So it's the words language or it's
yeah, and the two are so different, so it's interesting. So I completely understand. I mean, like seriously, but I mean, I thought it's nice kind of to express ideas, because I think this is also where my expertise is the best anyway. You know, so it's
extraordinarily interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. It was always
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.